The quest for Lord Stanley's Cup begins tonight in Los Angeles for the Colorado Avalanche, and a pretty late puck drop, all things considered. But with the season now upon us, how do we feel about the way that the team addressed their offseason concerns? And are we again in danger of some potential deja vu or history repeating itself with one of Colorado's newer and more prominent faces? All things to come on today's rundown, but we begin with a special shout out to our friends at Denver Regenerative Medicine. Guys, if weight loss has been a struggle for you, it's time for something real. At Denver Regenerative Medicine, they use full-strength GLP-1 medications with doctor oversight. You can start today with a free consultation and get real results for under $300 a month. Book now at denverregen.com. If we're going to be talking Avalanche, which we have a big hockey show planned for today as the Avalanche kick off their season, it's only right that we bring in friend of the show and host of the Mile High Hockey podcast, Will Peterson from DenverSports.com. Will, how are you, man?
I'm great, Richie. I cannot believe it's hockey season. Avs and Kings, 2 points on the line tonight. It's so good to be back. We're all enthralled with football, and I get it. But to have another year kicking off is fun stuff.
It is. And it's another year, as it has been for the better part of the last half decade or so, with pretty significant high expectations, at least between my 2 years here as it relates to the Colorado Avalanche. And there's a lot that I want to dive into today as it relates to tonight's game and the season going forward. But before we do, I do want to give a moment to highlight a funnier takeaway from Avs Media Day, where you were a mainstay presence for us here at the station, that had to do actually with something from last week at Thursday Night Football between the Rams and the 49ers at SoFi Stadium, obviously the palace that Kroenke built, where the Colorado Avalanche players were in attendance in Los Angeles Rams uniforms. Caused a little bit of a stir online. There was maybe some hurt feelings or some angst with Avalanche fans about seeing their favorite players in a jersey that's not a Broncos jersey if you're going to be at an NFL game. And you were the only person, by my recollection or by my eyes, to have broached that subject with some of the players, and you got some interesting responses that I thought were fun. So go ahead and take a listen to Cale Makar's response to Will Peterson's question about being photographed in Rams gear in LA.
At the end of the day, when you get offered to have an experience like that with the team that your owners own, it's fun. But obviously, I come from Calgary, so other than being a CFL fan, I'm a Broncos fan at heart. So fun experience, but I'm a ride or die Bo Nix guy. So fun to see them play yesterday. So we're all fans in here. Let's get that out of the way.
I'm a big Bo Nix guy, he says, which honestly, Cale's usually a man of pretty few words. So the fact that you got something like that for a soundbite, that I thought that was pretty fun.
Yeah, Bo Nix, ride or die from Cale Makar. Wanted to clear it up. We're all big Broncos fans in here. I'm a big Broncos fan.
Let's just get that out of the way right now.
He said, I'm from Calgary. Besides the CFL, my only team is the Broncos. So, yeah, listen, it was funny because when Cale started talking, Richie, he even made some sort of snide comment of like, Broncos win, big win yesterday. And I'm like, well, you just opened the door. I know why you're saying that, because the post on social media that the Avalanche kind of frankly doubled, tripled, quadrupled down on had like 10 million views. And here's what I have to say about it. First of all, Kroenke owns the LA Rams and owns the Avs. If someone was paying me millions of dollars to play a sport, I'd probably go watch their other sport and support them. I had no problem with it. Two, where were they the night before? They were in Vegas playing the Golden Knights. Better to have a boys' night out in LA altogether than everyone go on their way and party in Vegas. And then three, Richie, it was the Rams. It's not like Broncos and Rams is some big rivalry. Listen, if they had showed up to a Broncos-Chiefs game in Mahomes jerseys, I get it. That would really tick people off. But they are all Broncos fans. I know we'll get to the Gabe bite as well, but I thought Cale and Gabe both handled it well, and I just didn't see the outrage about it. I know a lot of people around these parts were mad. I'm talking specifically at our work. I'm talking to a lot of Broncos fans, a lot of Avalanche fans. This thing got a life of its own, and clearly the players wanted to kind of get out in front of it and explain their line of thinking.
Yeah, you alluded to it. Gabe Landeskog also gave an explanation, a response to like, hey, the Broncos are my team. That's never going to change. And, he admitted, and which I'm sure is the case with a lot of NHL players, that they weren't really big football watchers or certainly an NFL consumers prior to coming to the States to play in the NHL, and that was kind of the case for Gabe. But I agreed with, and you touched on it as well, his rationale of like, hey, listen, a billionaire invites you into their suite who also happens to own and take care of the franchise that you play for, for a night of some wining and dining, you take that invitation more often than not. And I certainly think I grew up a Broncos fan. I've spent the majority of my life in this town. I might put on a Matthew Stafford Rams jersey, if I was invited to do so, if that was the barrier for entry to me to experience that.
Totally. And they weren't even wearing Rams players jerseys. Look at the photo, everyone. Yep. They're wearing their own jerseys. Nathan McKinnon was in 29, McCarr was in 8, Landeskog was in 92. You guys get it. They had custom made jerseys. And you mentioned Gabe, and he said, the Kroenke family has taken care of me, which they certainly have. I mean, heck, think about the loyalty the Kroenke family has shown to Gabriel Landeskog over the last few years. There was never an inching, pushing type deal for him to retire as he battled back from his multiple knee surgeries. He said himself, he says, when the big boss invites you to do something like that, you do it. I wanted to ask the guys about it because I'm really interested in tonight. I'm really interested in the season, but quite frankly, Richie, if I didn't ask about it yesterday, we were never going to get responses about it. You had to ask about it yesterday. It was just going to disappear into the universe. So it was nice to be down there, nice to chat with them about it. And again, was glad to get good answers from them because it was clear the players wanted to get this off their chest. They weren't annoyed to talk about it. But I think when people come after you, you kind of want to tell your side of the story. And that's what Cale and Gabe did yesterday.
Well, one thing that's not going to fade away into the distance as it relates to the Colorado Avalanche, at least in the near future, is the ongoing situation with Martin Necas, right? He was acquired as kind of the big piece in the trade with the Carolina Hurricanes that sent Mikko Rantanen out of town, and he was going to be that, hey, if we can get 70% of the production from Mikko Rantanen, who's a perennial 100-point scorer, for about 70% of the cost, we'll be able to make up those points and add better depth scores. That was clearly MacFarland's vision. He certainly didn't envision him going to Dallas and then knocking the Avalanche out of the playoffs in the first round.
With a hat trick by in Game 7.
In the third period.
In the third period of Game 7, yeah.
So definitely didn't envision that.
No.
But that was the vision, and Necas was the main reason behind going in that direction. Well, Martin Necas is now up for a contract extension with the Avs. He's entering the final year of the deal that the Avs inherited from Carolina. And Will, I got to be honest, it feels like deja vu a little bit, where we now find Chris MacFarland and the Avs in the exact same situation that they were at with Mikko Rantanen, just with Martin Necas. And they have a situation where they need to either extend him and potentially pay, not as much as they would have paid Mikko Rantanen, but north of $10 million per year on average annual value, which may be more than what you would want for the production you might get. But you run the risk of letting him walk the way you let Mikko walk and then continuing to find diminishing returns there. Chris MacFarland spoke at Media Day about the contract discussions with Martin Necas, and here's what he had to say.
I've chatted with the agent. We're not going to get into the day-to-day, week-to-week type of stuff. We'd like to get something done. So I think that's kind of the update. Like, any free agent to be, you see there's a number of them still out there, and when you find the connection, and it gets announced sometimes early, sometimes mid-year, sometimes late, and that's the challenging part of the business. But we're super excited to have Marty and think he has a fantastic role, and he's an important player for it.
As is tradition, Will, with the hockey ecosphere in the NHL, very mum's the word on everything you really want to know about. So we're not going to get into it. We've had discussions with the agent and this and that, which is kind of how it started with the Mikko Rantanen thing before both sides started to get maybe a little testy and contradict or call out the things that the other party was saying. But overall, pretty mum's the word. I am of the mind, Will, that the Avalanche have to get a deal done with Martin Necas. And you're probably going to have to pay slightly above market value, but the salary cap's going to continue to go up, and it's not going to be as big of a concern, even though you're going to add Gabe's salary to the books, certainly as well. But you just can't let what happened to Mikko Rantanen happen twice. I think that they'll get more bang for their buck and more value out of Martin Necas in the 25 season than they got on the back half of 24, because he's had a full off season to kind of gel and assimilate, as has Brock Nelson and some of the other pieces. But if you let him walk and you find yourself in the middle of the season trying to find another top line winger, I just feel like you're setting yourself up to fail in a situation where the Avs continue to have a potentially fading opportunity to return to a Stanley Cup final. Where do you stand on the the situation between the Avalanche and their top line winger?
Yeah, I mean, obviously yesterday was a non-answer answer from Chris MacFarland. You got into everything that he said, which wasn't revealing much, but this is a GM who made 8-9 trades last year, and I can't imagine he wants to do anything close to that this season. I think he wants to go for the cup with this core. Not that he's not going to tweak, because these guys always have to tweak. Injuries happen, that kind of stuff, but I got to think if you had a Sean Payton latte with Chris MacFarland, he would tell you, I got to get something done with this guy. We can't do another big trade in the season because our chemistry just never got there. And we saw it last year when the Brock Nelsons and the Martin Necases of the world struggled in that series against the Stars. They need to play 82 together, so they are clicking on all cylinders going to the playoffs. One thing I will bring up, I think Connor McDavid did the Avalanche a huge favor yesterday. He only signed for $12.5 million. Ton of money in the real world, ton of money in hockey, but not a ton of money for Connor McDavid. When you look at Kaprizov getting $17 million from the Wild, Martin Necas is what, half the player that McDavid is, a quarter, a third of the player. I'd offer him something like $5, $6, $7 million bucks. Now his camp's going to balk at that. I get it, but I do think you have a negotiating tool. Well, McDavid took 12.5. Come on, Marty, meet us at 8, meet us at 9. Again, that may not be enough to get it done, but that's just something that, you know, the best player in the league or the second best player in the league, whether you think it's him or McKinnon, just took 12.5. Well, then Nate just can't even sniff 10 is going to be the way the Avalanche approach it. That may not work, but at least it's a little bit of a negotiating tool from now until, let's call it, New Year's Eve. By the time the calendar flips to 2026 with the trade deadline in early March, that's when the urgency is really going to heat up on this. But I'm with you. I hope it's done by Thanksgiving. I hope it's done by Christmas. I want this to be knocked out before we move into the new year.
Yeah, the main thing that I feel like held the Avalanche back really from the time the Mikko Rantanen trade took place, because that was, even though it was a couple months pre-trade deadline, about 6 weeks or so, it just shook up the snow globe on this team that has had a very tightly woven core and a lot of chemistry and synergy between their top line and the rest of their roster. And it just kind of disrupted things. And it felt like they were kind of playing catch up and trying to microwave that with a lot of new pieces and new acquisitions leading all the way up to the deadline and then into the postseason. And you need to avoid that, in my opinion, because again, and you actually asked Jared Bednar and others questions about this at a previous speaking engagement for the Avalanche, who they all freely admitted how much of a lifetime ago it feels like their cup run was.
Yep.
It was only a handful of years ago, but to them it feels like a lifetime, or in some cases multiple lifetimes, because it's damn hard to get back there. It's damn hard to get there, and it's even harder to get back there because of all the roster changes and things that typically you have to make when you win a championship. And that's not unique to hockey. That's something that happens in plenty of professional sports. So if you have an opportunity to avoid putting yourself in that situation, you have to pursue that direction. And if it falls apart because of ancillary outside reasons, if Necas and his camp really were to dig their heels in the ground, which it kind of seemed like in the offseason, that might be something that was prone to happen. There was rumors floating around from reputable NHL insiders that Necas wasn't pleased with his back half of the season stretch with the Avalanche and maybe looking to not extend and take his year and hit the open market for more money. That has since kind of gone by the wayside. Necas said that he's excited to be here and excited with what they have and thinks that they can truly contend. But yeah, this decision right now feels to me pretty clearly like the most important priority one thing for that front office to have to handle, because the tinkering of the roster with injuries and things like that is going to happen. You're going to call guys up, bring guys down. You'll probably bring in some supplementary pieces, but you can't be doing that in addition to having gray area and uncertainty around a top 6 player.
No, totally agree that this will be the number one priority. And quite frankly, it has to be the number one priority, because as soon as this year ends, and let's hope that ends with another parade, you've got a number one priority that's even bigger. And that will be Cale Makar entering the last year of his deal with Nathan McKinnon on the horizon the following summer. So, I mean, we talk about Necas, and he's a good player. He is a good player. He's a top 6 guy, as you mentioned, but then you're talking about generational players after that. So you got to get Necas handled at a fair number. You got to go make a deep run, hopefully win another cup, and then you sign Cale Makar up to be an Av for the rest of his career. I know that's easier said than done. A lot of that easier said than done, but if they could lay out the perfect blueprint, it would go Necas, Cup, Makar, McKinnon. Again, maybe I'm living in a little fantasy land, but you got to make sure that Cale Makar plays his whole career here, and that's going to be the priority this summer. Therefore, Necas has to get done well before that.
Well, hopes and dreams in fantasy land are what fuels expectations and hype and encouragement around professional sports organizations.
And fandom. That's why fans watch.
Yeah.
They want to have hopes and dreams. They want to believe we're all going to be downtown again this summer.
Can't spell fantasy without fans.
Exactly.
And when it comes to the Colorado Avalanche, who, as of this morning, hold the fourth best odds to hoist Lord Stanley's Cup for a fourth time in franchise history, it really does feel like there's only going to be so many opportunities to maintain the core that they have, to have health on their side, and be able to contend in a Western Conference and in an NHL where the landscape is continuing to get more and more difficult in a postseason setting. And so for Jared Bednar, who there's been conversations nationally and here locally about in a league where coaches get turned and burned and fired and moved on from more ruthlessly than almost any other professional league.
Yep.
You have to make that kind of emphasis and decision-making toward a title in order to prevent and keep that seat on the cooler side. And then you have the possibility of breaking up a core, something we saw the Nuggets, their ball arena co-tenants do by shipping out Michael Porter Jr. for Cam Johnson. Mikko Rantanen gone to Carolina and now to Dallas. So when you're looking at this 2025 season, Will, how much pressure is on Jared Bednar, on Chris MacFarland, on this roster, which is often kind of put in a tertiary or third setting when it comes to pressure, but for Gabe, for Nate, for Cale, for the remaining members of this core, how much pressure is on these guys to win a cup or at least make an appearance to win a cup in 2025, given what it could mean for the future? Are we talking Stanley Cup or bust?
Yeah, I think we are because honestly, even just sitting here with you right now, I'm getting a little deja vu of conversations we had this time last year, conversations I had on Mile High Hockey with my guys, Drew Spivak and Mike Evans, of like, is it cup or bust? Is it cup or bust? Well, guess what? It was bust, and they didn't make any huge changes. And I think in part that was because Kroenke fired the head coach and the GM of their basketball team, and they didn't want to do it 2-1 offseason with a head coach and a GM of a hockey team as well. I think in a weird way, Michael Malone and Calvin Booth getting fired maybe bought Jared Bednar and Chris MacFarland some time, but it only bought them so much time, and it bought them time to this moment, to now, to this season. Never rooting for anyone to get fired, but yes, I would expect major changes behind the bench and in the front office if the Avalanche come up woefully short again, a first or second round loss in the playoffs like they've had so many times over the last decade.
The Cup year was the exception.
Exactly.
Really.
Regular season success and then postseason failure. And then to answer the other part of your question, you mentioned the players. Nathan MacKinnon himself told us a couple of weeks ago it would be, quote, disappointing if I only got one cup in my career. He gets it. The difference between 1 and 2 is what separates the really good from the greats. Go look at the greats in any sport. Almost all of them have 2 rings, with, guys like Dan Marino being the rare exception, having 0. But even in this town, Joe Sakic has 2. John Elway has 2. Nikola Jokic, we're all hoping, gets 2. Nathan MacKinnon, Gabe Landeskog, Cale Makar. Like, getting that second one is what really puts you over the hump. And MacKinnon realizes that. They're still young. Makar's still young, especially. I think he's 26 now. But
Correct. These
These players gotta think this is a once in a lifetime opportunity, because I'm never going to play with these exact same guys ever again. I'm not saying that they're going to hit the panic button and Cale's gone or Nathan's gone, but you got Valeri, you got Arturi, you got Devon, you got these household names that these guys, if you sat down with them and just sort of had an off the record chat, they would tell you we are far too good to only win one championship. I get that sounds so greedy, because it probably is a little greedy, but guess what? It's rare in life you have opportunities like this. They need to seize it and get a second cup, preferably this year, to save the job of their head coach and their GM.
Championship or bust, must win. Those are things I think that get thrown around kind of colloquially in sports that really don't have always the life or death payoff. Like you mentioned, it was Stanley Cup or bust last year for a lot of people in that building and externally, and they busted. Usually when you bust, you're out of money and you got to leave the table.
Right.
But when you're a professional sports organization, and maybe there's some of the outside factors that you mentioned there with what went on with the Nuggets and Booth and Malone, you get to go back to the ATM more so than you got to hit the road. And so that's why it's hard to say like must win, Stanley Cup or bust. But I do believe this is a Stanley Cup or bust season for the Avs, as close to that definition as you could make it. I think there is less wiggle room for nuance with that label this season than there have been in previous seasons, Will. And but I'll go so far as to say this as well. I absolutely think that is in front of the Avs this season. I think that the moves that they made, you mentioned the 8 or 9 trades that MacFarland made last year, all of that flurry and all that disruption of shaking up the snow globe. Well, the snow has settled now inside. And those players like Necas, like Jack Drury, Brock Nelson, have had opportunities to settle into their role, to develop chemistry with their new line mates, and to move forward. The depth scoring should hopefully be better as a result of that. Then you bring in like an Olofsson and a Brent Burns, and you start plugging these other pieces that you had to do as supplementary characters on this team. And they still weren't brought in January, weren't brought in at the deadline. They're brought in the offseason. They get to go through training camp, and all of that should be gone. I know Mackenzie Blackwood's not going to play tonight in LA. It'll be Scott Wedgwood. But that goaltending tandem that has been the biggest sign of life for the Avs in that department since they won the Cup. And even then, there was a lot of, pins and needles moments with Frankie and Kemper. They're settled into their role and more comfortable, and will continue to kind of build upon that. I absolutely think that the Colorado Avalanche are in a Stanley Cup or bust window. And Will, I will go one step further and say this. I think this is the best opportunity in the franchise history of the Avalanche and the franchise history of the Denver Nuggets that we could legitimately see tandem parades here in town. I've never been more bullish on the Nuggets team. I think I'm more bullish on the Nuggets team going into 2025 than I was the year they won the title. Now, every year with Nikola Jokic gives you wide eyes and delusions of grandeur because of what he's capable of doing. But the offseason moves that they made coming into this 2025 season on the hardwood have me thinking this is a Larry O'Brien year for the Nuggets. And I think that the moves that MacFarland made last season with the opportunity to kind of gel, put the Avalanche firmly in that category. I really think we could be talking about at least 2 simultaneous finals appearances, if not double parades.
Gosh, can you imagine? I mean, Denver would obviously be the center of the sports universe if that was the case. It would just be incredible. It would be so much fun flipping the ice to the hardwood, to the ice to the hardwood down at Ball Arena into the middle of June. Are you kidding me? I mean, we've all got Broncos fever, and rightfully so, but I cannot imagine if both of them are playing in Western Conference Finals and then playing in a championship series, the energy in this town. 2 parades. Well, we're going to have one on a Tuesday and one on a Wednesday. Sure, let's do it back to back.
Camp out.
Yeah, I mean, we're dreaming big. I get it. It's early October. We're dreaming big. But you're right. Both teams are good enough to do it. Now they just got to go pull it off. And, checking that second championship box for both of them in the same year, I might just be able to die happy. I may just go into retirement at that point.
Is it a fever dream? Yes. Is it, up high in the sky and all these? Yes, because it's incredibly difficult to win a championship in any professional sport, period. I happen to think that a Stanley Cup is maybe the hardest professional sports championship to acquire, and the Avalanche have a hard path to get there, as do the Nuggets, who, there's been some moving and some shaking in the Western Conference that maybe changes the power dynamic there. But yeah, well, I don't know. If I'm looking at both teams individually, this feels like certainly the best opportunity that they've had since they each won their respective titles to try to repeat. And it just happens to be colliding in the same season.
Yeah, no, I'll give you that. The only thing I will say is the Avalanche, I definitely agree with you, because all the Nichushkin and Landeskog stuff, that derailed everything. If the Nuggets don't blow a 20-point lead to the Wolves, they would have gone back-to-back. So that would be where I'd give you a teeny bit of pushback because the Thunder weren't quite there yet, and they are now. But yeah, you're right. The Nuggets, they have 8 rotation players for the playoffs, and 4 of them are new. So as long as those 4 gel with Christian Brown, Aaron Gordon, Jamal Murray, and of course the GOAT, Nikola Jokic, they could do it too. I can't wait. I'm so excited. Puck drops tonight. You mentioned 8:50. We will be up late, but you can read all about it at DenverSports.com.
Since you've got about 8 hours or so to really think about it, Will, what is going to be the number one thing you are looking for or hoping to see when the Avs hit the ice against the Kings later tonight?
Yeah, I think it's just Gabe Landeskog. Just make sure he's all good. He was the Avalanche's best player in 5 playoff games last year, or one of their best players, which is nuts. The guy hadn't played professional hockey in 3 years. Yeah. And I think we're all just kind of on this assumption, like, Gabe's great, he's fine. And guess what? We should be on that because that's what Gabe's saying. That's what Jared Bednar's saying. But still, doing it for 5 games versus doing it for 82 is a totally different beast. I'm just hoping Gabe looks like himself, looks fine. And, these first few games, Richie, every time we tune in, we're going to be, where's 92? How's 92 look? Let's just hope by call it November that you just flip on the Avs and you're excited to watch Gabe, but you're not thinking about Gabe because it's just Gabe playing hockey. I'm not going to be thinking about Nathan tonight. I'm just going to be watching Nathan play hockey. But yeah, that'll be kind of the one thing tonight. And then you mentioned as well, no Blackwood. That shouldn't be a long-term thing, but Wedgwood tonight, just can't give up 4-5. Give your team a chance. Hopefully the Avs can get out of there with a 4-2 win, something like that.
And you know what? When you say that, which I agree with you in terms of, Wedgwood, give your team a chance, kind of like keep things steady and don't do what we saw so often with Georgiev, where it's like you're, midway through the first period and you're down 3-0 or whatever it was. But one of the main things I'm going to be looking for, not just tonight, but over the course of the season as it continues to grow, I want this Avalanche team to get off to faster starts again.
Yeah.
The year they won the Cup, their offensive presence in the O-zone was relentless. It felt like the other goalie was just under mortar fire for 3 consecutive periods, and it made them so hard to handle because they just kept the pressure on you for the majority of every period. And the last handful of years, it's really kind of felt like they've been, I don't want to say sleepwalking, but they've definitely been more reactive than proactive when it came to the scoring. They might give up one and then they're kind of chasing and you're down one, you're tied, you're up one, you're tied, then you're down one, then you're tied. Whereas I just kind of want to get back to them getting out fast, utilizing the speed and the skating that especially their top line is known for, and not putting themselves in a position where they're always in the back of that mind trying to chase rather than being the one leading the pack.
Totally. They need to do that because it's got to be a foot on the gas mentality. You mentioned when they won the Cup, they were relentless. Well, they were also relentless in the standings. They had all 4 series start at Ball Arena. They were up 2-0 in 3 of the 4 series that started at Ball Arena. I talked to Gabe Landeskog about that a few weeks ago, and he said, we got to just try to win every game possible. This team's not scared of any sort of President's Trophy curse. They're not scared of chasing the number 1 seed. It's about time. Winnipeg doesn't win the Central. Dallas doesn't win the Centrals. Series needs to go through Denver, and the Avalanche need to ride 2-0 series leads into easy 4-5 game wins, especially early. Keep that momentum going. Stay fresh, stay healthy. And hopefully if the puck is dropping the majority of the time here in Denver, that can be a massive advantage. But you're right, no 12-12-2 starts out of the gate, because guess what? The 2 points tonight count as much as the 2 points in April. If the Avalanche are going to be a 110, 115-point team, they can't lose focus. Every single game they have to treat as a valuable commodity to get that pair of points, and that starts tonight in LA.
It does, and I'm excited for it, man. I just think there's so much optimism and hope and excitement around both of the teams that call Ball Arena home, and it's going to now coincide with what we hope coming off of a big win against the Eagles will be a nice little run for the Denver Broncos. We got some big news and somewhat, scary or unsettling news coming out of Boulder, which you can read the latest about at DenverSports.com. Trent Finnegan and Jake Shapiro and all those guys have it all covered up there in the Flatirons. And it's just going to be, we're entering an exciting stretch of time for Colorado sports, Will. I think.
Oh, yeah. One of the best times of the year. October is so much fun. You got all the big dogs playing, and then, hopefully the Broncos can take us as far as possible. And then whenever their run comes to an end, maybe with a championship, who knows, if we want to dream crazy big. By the time the calendar flips to February, March, we'll be in the stretch run for the Avs and Nuggets. Can't wait.
Love it. Well, Will, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for everything you do at DenverSports.com and here on all of our social channels with the Mile High Hockey Podcast. Can't wait to tune into that multiple times a week now for the remainder of hockey season. And I'm sure we will find an opportunity to catch up again soon.
Yeah, sounds good, Richie. Thanks so much for having me. Go Avs, go Nugs, go Broncos, go Buffs, and Rockies hire a GM, please.
Co-sign everything that Will said. Thank you all for joining us. Have a wonderful rest of your afternoon, and we will catch you at noon tomorrow for the next rundown. I do what I love what I do, second nature.